Well, welcome to the Make Work Not Suck podcast. I am your co-host, Daniel Steere, here with Ryan Hodges. And I wanted to have a conversation today about monotonous tasks. When you think about all the things that suck about work, and there's definitely a lot that we could talk about there. If you zoomed in on just one of them, one of the things you could zoom in on is monotonous tasks, right? Having to do the same thing over and over and over again. Uh, Oftentimes, not even knowing if you're making a difference.
Welcome to the Make Work Not Suck podcast.
Ryan, I'm going to ask you in a second about your most monotonous job. But for me, worst monotonous job was summer internship with a chemical manufacturer. Was supposed to be like an engineering internship, but it took them months to get the paperwork all ironed out. And so they were like, hey, could you just work on the assembly line for like just a couple of days until we get all the paperwork ironed out? And I'm like, sure, like I'll be a team player. And I spent 6 weeks, I think, standing there watching little bottles of pills whiz by. And I was, quality control, quote unquote, for this manufacturer. 8 hours a day of just like standing there watching little bottles of pills or packets or whatever. Just like, I can't even begin to tell you how boring it was. And maybe later in the episode, we'll share a little bit about what I did with that. But like, it was one of my first jobs and by far the most monotonous, boring, it felt worthless job. So Ryan, how about you? Most monotonous job?
Ooh, mine was when I was 17, 18 years old. I was doing data cable work, and it was doing punch downs on data jacks. And it's the same 8 wires, just punch, 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 go to the next cubicle, punch, 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 go to the next cubicle, punch, 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 hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times.
Ooh.
It just, and then you'd have to go back and test it, and you realize you screwed one up. You have to go back and redo it all over again. So then it became a game of like, how many can I get right before I screw up? That was the only way to make it any bit of fun, but it was the same rinse and repeat. And you had to do it twice because you had to do it on the one end of the cable, and then you had to go back and do it on the patch cable or patch panel side. So yeah, you had to punch 8 little teeny tiny wires that, you had to sit there and fiddle with your fingers, poke you. And
are you like under a desk in the dark trying to get that done? Okay.
Yeah, you run over to the cubicle, and then you're laying under the cubicle trying to unwind these little wires and then get them in the little thing that punch the tool. It's not a fun job.
Yeah. It's funny that you said you had to kind of make a game for yourself of how many can I do before I screw one up. I started playing a game while I was working on the assembly line, which is like, how far could I let the stuff back up and still catch up, right? So like, I think I had to box at one point. I had to box all the pills into a box, and it came at a decent pace, but it was just boring. And so like, I would leave and go to the bathroom and come back and see if I could, really fast try to catch up before I got in trouble. Which was just the only way I could entertain myself in an 8-hour shift on the assembly line. But I don't know, maybe that's a strategy we'll discuss later. So, okay, we've both worked stupid, crappy jobs that have had a lot of monotony. Let's step back from those examples for a second, because I think everyone probably has had an example like that, or God forbid, you're there now, right? You're in a crappy, monotonous job. You do the same thing for hours and hours and hours, and you hate it, and may or may not even make a difference whether or not you do your job, right? How do we make that better? Like, what would you do if you had a magic wand and you could go back to that job that was so monotonous? What would you do to make it better? How would you make that not suck? There you go. There's your question.
Make work not suck. it's a hard one to say what I would do if I could wave my magic wand, because there's a couple things I can say. It's really easy. I would have explained why this was important and figured out the mission we're trying to achieve. And, the faster, efficient we can do it, the more money as an organization we recover by not paying extra, time to do it. Or, we give a good product and the data cables are good, which means the employees that will be sitting that cubicle have a, good. Yeah.
Sorry, I need a button somewhere that's like,
Yeah.
or a gong. I'm gonna get a gong.
You're going to get a gong.
Just be like, gong. Like, ugh, that sounds terrible.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I'm like that's what, like, as the business guy, that's what I would say. But maybe that's the manager's approach. Maybe that's the problem, is that's what managers think they need to do to fix the monotonous task. But like, to actually fix it, I mean, there are some people out there that really enjoy just the repetitive work. They love showing up. They love doing the job, and it's consistent. They like that consistency. They love the repetitive work, and they get pride out of doing, quality work day in, day out. And so the question is like, is it a matter of like, how do you make that job not suck? Or is it, how do you not get yourself into that job? Or if you're in that role, how do you leverage yourself getting out of it? Because you needed to pay, you needed a job to pay the bills, and that
Right.
just happened to be what it is. And you're just not one of those monotonous task kind of people.
Yeah.
So,
It's really interesting you bring that point up, because I when I was a kid, I would mow lawns for money in the summer. And it was a pretty monotonous job, because you're just, kind of going back and forth, back and forth. But now that I'm a homeowner and I work in, much more of an abstract, long-term projects that could take years, or hardly know if you're making a difference sometimes with some clients, I actually like mowing my lawn now, because it's like I can actually see something completed, right? It's like I start and I finish and it's done and it's good, and I know that it's done and I know that it's good. And I hadn't thought about the fact that there's probably some people that don't mind those kinds of jobs, because you can actually know at the end of the day, I did my job, I did it well, and I'm done.
well, you couple of things there, right? So like, when I was thinking about when I was a kid mowing, I gamified it.
Of course you did.
And it was, just when I was a younger kid, it was, how fast could I go? And then I would always get in trouble, because then there would be all the little patches, and
Right.
like mow the whole lawn again. And then I spent twice as long, as I had to do it, twice.
Right.
So then
Like losing the gamified version.
right. So then it became like, how do you do it as fast as you can and get told you did a good job? So, that's something from that standpoint. But then you go back to, homeowners and lawns now, there's a sense of pride in it.
Right.
And you own it, right? Like, you own the lawn, and you want it to look good, and you want it to be enjoyable for your family or whatnot. But that goes back to what I was talking about with, like, we get into the business world, put a why behind it, the value behind it that I got gonged for.
Yeah.
That's the same thing, is there's some sort of pride or value behind that monotonous work, versus when you're doing the monotonous work for somebody else. If you're not invested in it, and you don't have a reason to work for it, and you don't know what the value is on the other side, work sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe we need to break down monotonous work into different kinds of monotonous work, right? Because what I think I'm hearing is that not all monotonous work is the same. And depending on maybe your personality and how you're wired, maybe you like just things that are very very clear and obvious and straightforward. There's no uncertainty. It's like, make the donuts. And there isn't a question about, should I invest in this AI software? It's like, nope, make the donuts. That's your job. Maybe that appeals to some people. And so that's probably a class of monotonous jobs, is just people who actually like it. And I think there's also this level of ownership, right? If it's something that you feel a sense of ownership around, I think it doesn't make the monotony okay, but I think it makes it a lot easier to tolerate if there's something about it that you feel a sense of ownership of. So then where does it break down with the managers who are trying to create a sense of ownership?
Well, you've got, now a secondary problem, right? In a scenario where you got the three tiers, you've got the executive, the manager, and the employee. Well, if the employee is not bought into what they're doing and understand what's going on with it, then you get to the manager. The manager's being forced to hit a quota, a production quantity, or whatever. And so now you've got this person that's, if they're not bought into it, now you're trying to get a bought in person to convince a non bought in person to do, repetitive task. And well, that just sounds like a death spiral to me.
Yeah, I can't imagine they're going to be very successful.
I don't want to walk into this place. I feel like I'm going to, be depressed just watching it.
Right. It feels like an episode of The Office. It just, it kind of makes your skin crawl. All right. Well, so then what do you do if you're a manager, and you've got a bunch of people working for you that have monotonous jobs?
Really, it's just ask your people, what do they value in life? Like, what's their life's work? What's their mission? What do they find pride in? And I'm willing to bet you'll find some sort of correlation. If they're the kind of person that likes doing those repetitive tasks, what you find is correlation to what they're doing in their job and what their passion is in their personal life. And really, it's just bridge the gap. I mean, I know it sounds overly simplified, but it's connecting that value that their work brings and how it helps them achieve their life goals. If you can connect the personal and the professional together, then it actually can make work a little bit more enjoyable, even if you're doing the same thing every single day.
Yeah, that's true. What would you do with somebody who doesn't have a life goal? Like I've got a client of mine who's a Chick-fil-A operator, hires a lot of Gen Z employees, right? So you've got kids that are 16, 18, maybe still in college, 21 years old. And you're like, what's your life goal? And they're like, I want to get drunk this weekend.
See, no, you're confusing, our generation, the older generation with the younger generation. I guarantee you, they know what they want to do. Just,
okay.
The older generations are the ones that just wanted to go party and drink on the weekend.
Oh, okay. All right. Clearly I'm not a Gen Z.
If you ask a Gen Z, I guarantee you the problem they don't want to do is they want, something more than that. They want a, $100,000 salary doing this world-changing thing and skip the, climbing the ladder component. So that's a different problem.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go back to this idea of different kinds of monotonous jobs, right? So some of those jobs, some people will actually like because there's a sense of accomplishment, there's a sense of achievement, and maybe it ties to their life purpose.
Checking the box. There are people that love to check the box. If I can check 15 boxes today, I feel like I've contributed to society.
I mean, I've got a little bit of that. I love checking a good box. But then there's others, right? Like I've had a friend, or I've had people that I know, coworkers, who like spend hours every week preparing the same report, pulling all of this data out of this report and putting it into this spreadsheet so that it can go to this person, so that it can go to this person. And just think like deep in the bowels of some giant bureaucracy. And your job is just to take some information from one place, hand it to the next place. And that, I think, is a different kind of monotony. What would you do to the employee or the manager in that situation?
Okay. So you're in the middle of the big cog machine, bureaucracy, right? So you're probably not going to find connectedness to work. But at the end of the day, you're doing a job to help somebody else do their job, to help somebody else doing their job. So find the colleague down the line and what are they doing with your data? Maybe find interest in what they do with it. What does your work produce and who's on the other side of that? If you can. In some cases you can't. Maybe just do the best you can. But if you can find who's on the other side of it, they're human too. They're trying to do a job too. And that's building a little bit of culture there. The culture of the organization could be amazing. It could be total shit, but that doesn't mean your world has to suck, right? So if you're part of a process where there's other people around you, figure out how it connects with their job, and then see if you can find joy in helping them be better. Or if you do your work better, then it removes stress or frustrations down the line. And you might find your job more enjoyable because the person down the line that impacts you, how it fits in, even if the culture of the organization, is good or bad.
Yeah, that's good. I would say, again, not to circle back to to your answer that got gonged, but I do think that as an employee, it can be valuable to go to your manager and say, why are we doing this way?
Yes.
Right? Can you explain to me why this is the way we do it? Right? And you got to be a little careful there, because it can sound like complaining. It can sound like you're being lazy and not wanting to work. Right? So you got to make sure you phrase that correctly and at the right time. But if you can sincerely ask, hey, can you just explain this to me? I don't get why I'm taking all this information from this place and putting it over here. It can foster a conversation where sometimes things are being done simply because they've always been done, and the reason that they were started no longer applies. And I've seen that in a ton of organizations where, like, oh, well, yeah, you've got to get the TPS reports out. And it's like, well, how come? Like, who reads the TPS report? And they're like, oh, corporate reads the TPS reports. And I was like, okay. And I call corporate and I was like, hey, what do you guys do with those TPS reports? And they're like, what do you mean TPS reports? They're like, oh, that just goes to an empty mailbox. We don't even check that. We haven't looked at that in years. And I was like, oh my gosh, these people are wasting hours of their life every week for a report that they think is important that nobody's looking at, right? So, and that happens in more places than you think. So just asking the question again with a good intent and a good spirit of, hey, can somebody explain to me the big picture of how what I'm doing fits into what this organization's trying to do? It might not be my life purpose. We might not be curing cancer, but if I at least know how my piece fits into the bigger puzzle, I can maybe take a little pride in it, or then potentially identify things that are being done that we should just stop doing.
Well, let's walk that one a little bit. So let's put from the employee perspective. Nothing gets solved or fixed by bitching about a problem. Managers have enough things to deal with, right? Like the manager is getting stuff from the top, they're getting stuff from the bottom, they're being squeezed. So as an employee, what's one thing you can do to help them work not suck is not be a pain in your manager's ass, right?
Yeah.
No, genuinely, I think you're right. You're right. Ask, right? But it's when you go up and go like, why do we do this? I don't get it. I waste my time every day. You're coming at it as a problem. Whereas you can approach it in the sense of, look, you want to make your work not suck? Just walk with your manager and go, I would like to learn the value behind this so I can better do my job.
I like that. That's a better way of asking it.
And you know what? That's very, it's the same. You're getting to the same point. And I think this is where sometimes we're frustrated with it. And so we just want to go the bitchy route, right?
Mm-hmm.
But okay, take a step back and go, if you really want to solve the problem and make work not suck, just change the way you approach the question. I want to understand the value in this so I can better do my job. I'm tired of doing I'm tired of this sucky work, and I want it to be more meaningful. So can you teach me or show me how I can learn where this better fits? I said, because then if I understand it more, I can be better at it. You know what a manager's going to do? Hey, that's either a great question. Let me, you know what? I don't know the answer myself. Let me figure it out. Or, hey, you know what? Why don't you ask Bob for some training? Or, hey, let me sit down and explain with you. You know what? That from a manager is going to make their day, because now they feel like they're connected to the employee, right?
Right.
And if you're an employee, you just took a problem off your boss's plate, which makes you, I don't want to say, look, trying to be the hero, but now you're working together. It's collaboration.
Right.
And then, of course, if you're the manager in this situation and your employee approaches you and you tell him to fuck off, well, bad move, buddy.
Yeah. Right. Bad move by the manager.
But remember, we said we're going to be slightly snarky here. So if we dial it back in the manager, you say, look, that's not your problem, or don't worry about it, this, that, and the other, you're actually making the work suck for your people because you're oppressing their ability to learn. Like anytime you've got someone coming to you that's asking for help or looking for guidance and not bitching. Bitching's a different problem. Bitching needs to be shut down, needs to be managed, not rudely, professionally. But if you've got someone genuinely trying to learn, which I don't think I've ever come into very few managers that I've ever run into genuinely were assholes. Most of them were ultimately good people and just overloaded and stressed. But as soon as somebody walked up with a genuine request, they went out of their way to figure it out. And then I think the same thing to your point with leaders. If you're a leader listening, if you've got an employee and a manager that's wanting to learn, don't do the not your problem. Give them guidance or direction. Don't shut them down because to your point, they may be bringing something that may be broken. Your frontline people are your biggest source of information. And if you're shutting down your source of information, it's the worst thing you can do.
Yeah. I think that, as you look at employees, there's certainly a class of employees that they're just going to complain about everything. Right. And so as a manager, those are hard people to manage. But they are what they are. And you pretty quickly identify, like, this guy's just going to complain about everything. So I tune him out and I stop listening. And then there's the people who just don't say a whole lot. And they just kind of do what they're told, and they're easier to manage. There is that rare employee who actually takes the initiative to ask, to learn, to understand. And if you're either one of the other two, right, you're the guy who complains about everything, or the person who just says fine and does it. I actually think the path for an employee to make work not suck is actually that path of kind of leaning in a little bit, no matter how crappy the job is, and saying, how can we make this better? Can you explain this to me? Because oftentimes, especially with how quickly technology is evolving, a lot of these monotonous jobs could be improved, potentially even outsourced. And I'm not trying to get anybody fired here, but I'm just saying, most companies that I know of right now don't have enough good people. Everybody's looking for good people all the time, right? So if you are smart, hardworking, inquisitive, you want to make things better, and you find a way to take a crappy job and cut it in half or outsource it, or you find some way to improve or overcome that, man, that's actually your best move to a promotion. Whether it's at this company or someplace else, somebody's going to pay you for that. And so bitching or ignoring are probably both the wrong answers for employees, and engaging, leaning in and saying, okay, what could we do together to maybe make this suck a little bit less is a great step towards not only making the job better, but also making your own life better.
Yeah. There's everything you said in there was great. I want to do the other side of it, right? Is there's a dichotomy, there's a balance, because if you're inquisitive on everything in the role, then it looks like you're challenging authority. There's a point where there are some things that there are opportunities where there's a reason it is what it is. Maybe there's a big system change coming 6 months down the road, and it's just got to be status quo until the time gets there. It's that whole seeking to understand, and knowing the balance of when to push and when to yield. Because there are sometimes you may get, look, we just need you to do this. And why? Or, there's also a good thing in this. Again, this is delicate balance. If you're unsure of things, ask your peers out of curiosity, not out of intent to mutiny or bitch, right? When we get on the water cooler and we all bitch about it, then, we're really not helping our case. But if we can go to our peers and say, what's going on? And then you can go to the manager and say, hey, we would like to figure it out. If a manager has strength in numbers, again, that actually helps in upward communication versus, the other thing is it's always great. You're right. If you're that proactive person that is trying to better understand and better everything around, make sure you're not doing it as a siloed hero. You're not trying to get ahead of everybody else, because guess what? It'll come back and bite you.
It will pull you down.
It will pull you down. And it is, you're right. Being that proactive person, you're part of your job may get outsourced or get transferred or redundant or whatever. But if you're the one that's bringing the information and the solution to the table, well, guess who's going to be in line for the next promotion? Just like you said.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
don't be afraid of
if AI.
Yeah.
If AI or the robots are going to take your job, make sure you're the one leading that, not getting run over by it.
Right.
The other thing I'll mention is there are some monotonous jobs that just are what they are, right? Like it's not a situation where this is a process that we started years ago. We're still doing it, but we don't know why. We kind of forgot our purpose. I think about something like truck driving, right? Like there's a lot of people who drive trucks for a living. And some people enjoy the solitude. They enjoy the,
but that's not a monotonous job to them.
To them, it's not.
Think about it. That's one thing to think of. A monotonous job is only monotonous to the person that doesn't like doing it.
Right. And so I wanted to talk about those people who don't like doing it, but they're stuck in it.
Yep.
And what I would say to them is, I think that monotony can be a huge opportunity for multitasking for self-improvement, right? There are so many podcasts and audiobooks and master classes and all of these things. If you can find a way to put in a pair of headphones or turn on, some sort of device, there is just so many resources out there. And that becomes actually, I think, an opportunity to not only, keep the money coming in because you got to pay the bills, but then begin preparing yourself for the thing you'd really rather be doing. And in a monotonous job, again, if it's monotonous to you, to your point, Ryan, if this is not something you enjoy, but you're doing it because you have to, maybe your family needs you to make the money, then find a way to use that time as best you can to move in the direction you do want to go.
Well, and use it as motivation and fuel. Use it as the I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to, and I think one thing I don't think we're saying is like plug in an audiobook and in a manufacturing plant where you're in an unsafe environment, right? Like it's utilize the time appropriately and clear it. Make sure that hey, is it okay if I listen to this podcast while I'm on the line doing this thing? If that's something that's okay, and there's a lot of places that let you listen to music and whatnot. So you're right, maximize the time. Instead of spending the time being frustrated in the job, use it as availability to do something, like you're saying, to better, to learn, to improve, and to apply.
Yeah, and that's not like TikTok videos or...
No, don't sit there and be flipping on TikTok.
Right. Or listening to romance novels. No, listen to something that's actually going to help you.
If listening to romance novels helps make the job less monotonous, then go for it. I mean, I think it's all about how do you make work not suck? What do you get enjoyment out of that you can parallel with the work? And sometimes it's a matter of, there may be a policy or a procedure in place that doesn't allow you to do it. But this again goes back to the manager. Like, right. Hey, I'm good with doing the work, but can I just, can we turn some music on? I mean, how can you make work fun?
Yeah.
And I mean, there's been times, and again, I can't really say this because I don't do this every single day, but there's been times like sweeping in a warehouse has been made fun.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, the music gets blaring in the warehouse. It's, after hours. So the hustle and bustle, and you're not worrying about, the forklifts running over. Everybody grabs a broom, helps out, and then the place is swept and it's fun, and people are dancing and cheering and singing. I mean, I've seen it. So
that sounds like a musical you're thinking of.
No, but that's kind of, I mean, if you want to call it one, it was a bad one, but
I don't know of any workplace I've ever been in where people spontaneously break out into singing. But maybe you've worked at different kinds of companies.
I didn't say they spontaneously broke out and sing. I said they made work fun.
No, you said singing and dancing.
Well, there's just a couple guys screwing around with the broom, but 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 it's all about how can you make it fun, or how can you, if you're like learning, listening to audiobooks, if you enjoy, listening to music, if you enjoy, just it's all about how can you make the work fun. If you're stuck doing it, or if at the moment it is what it is, it's how can you make it fun. If you're competitive, gamify it, not in a win-lose kind of manner. You can't screw up your job. But it's like, how can I gamify it in a way to make this fun? And you find that it's not, it's the task itself is monotonous, but if you make fun around it, then you'll find the time flying by. But if you spend all your time, complaining about it, or, going the other direction where you have the negative thoughts, then it is only going to make it worse. And it is only going to be boring, and it is only going to feel like eternity. So,
yeah. Yeah, I think maybe to add on to that, making your work not suck is not your manager's job. Making your work not suck is your job. And you're basically responsible for making your work not suck. And so that involves.
I'm going to challenge that.
Okay, go for it.
So I do agree. You are part of the equation. You do have to do your own, but I do think it is also in the leader and the manager's role to try to make the job as enjoyable as possible. That doesn't mean giving everybody donuts every morning, but if you find an opportunity to make it fun or to build culture, you should do that. That, I think, is another problem, is we get so stuck on the production, the IQ part of the equation, get so stuck on the production numbers, hit the numbers, the unit counts, blah, 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 that we negate the culture aspect, the human element of it. And it's one of those, you can have both. You just got to find the right solution. And there's nothing that says you can't make work fun. It's not work has to suck to hit the production numbers. That's not why we go to work.
Right. Yeah.
So,
yeah, you're right. I would agree. I think managers and executives have a responsibility to try to help in that process as much as they can. I want to caution against the passivity, right? The employee who's like, well, this job sucks, and so my manager needs to fix that. And that I would challenge and say, okay, maybe they have a role to play, but so do you. And understanding how you're wired and what kinds of things you enjoy doing, what kinds of things you do well, and then finding ways to either make your job more like that, or finding another job that is more like that. Like there's a big part of this that is also on the shoulders of each individual employee to partner with their manager and leader to try to figure out how to make their job not suck.
Well, I'm about to say one of my favorite analogies.
What did I do?
The meet in the middle, right?
Okay.
You don't meet in the middle by each going 50-50. If you take a point in time, a beginning and an end, let's just say 100 feet, for example.
Okay.
And each one of you, it goes, you got to meet in the middle. You have to put 100% effort to meet that person in that half distance. If you only put in 50% of the effort to get to the middle, you're only going to be 25% in. And if the other person only puts 50% of the effort in, you're going to have a 50% gap in the middle because you're still a gap. You have to put 100% effort to meet in the middle. And that's what I think you're talking about, is you can't sit back and wait for the manager to come to you. You can't sit back and wait for someone to figure it out for you or be told what to do. You have to put the effort in to do your part, but it is up to the business, the managers, leaders to meet their part as well. And that's typically what the manager's role is. The manager's role is to be in that middle person, to move up and down the chain, right? So it takes us all.
Yeah. So in summary, if a train leaves Denver going 50 miles an hour and another train leaves Chicago going at 47 miles an hour and it's 1,400 miles away, that is how you make work not suck.
Sure. Ride a train. Why not? You know what? You want to make work not suck? Go ride one of those Japanese trains. Those are amazing.
Make Work Not Suck, our podcast that talks about exactly that. Our process, vision, journey, culture, and results. We present real-world business solutions that make the difference.